timely, targeted, temporary, but we're just seeing the ends of that washing through the system now. It hardly seems.
This is a
and you had a famous saying, didn't you? At least that's what we heard, that you told ministers in the way that they should respond.
Well, we had this experience in the early 1990s recession. You can't spend all the money in 1 month, in 6 months, in 12 months. You simply can't do it. And so there will be a tail on the fiscal stimulus. And people will wonder if that tail really should be there, whether it should have been withdrawn earlier. But the tail's unavoidable. And so when you're taking the decisions that you're going to have a fiscal policy response of that form, one which involves an infrastructure bill, you need to be aware that the tail is going to be there.
Do you fear that the politics of this, for the people that were involved, leaves them with a sense that they get no credit? If people avoid a recession,
sure,
the population doesn't understand
There's no question
the bullet that they have dodged.
There is no question about that. But to their credit, my assessment of it at the time was that the ministers were well aware of that. They knew it. They knew they'd get no credit for it.
And do you think that the next time around they might think about that and pause? So can you tell us exactly what you said in that little phrase?
I think not. I think not. The truth is,
and do you feel vindicated, really, particularly after that first stimulus package, because you did see, going to that time as well, a lot has been written and said about the leadership of Kevin Rudd and that particularly that group that was involved, the Gang of Four as it's been called. What was your assessment of the leadership at that time?
In the Treasury? In terms of, I don't want to talk too much about this, obviously, and I'm never going to write a book about this period. I think it's quite unfair, but I would say this, that the interest, the intense interest that Prime Minister Rudd showed in the issues, and the fact that he got onto them so early, is a great credit to him, actually. I think the story has been told that as early
was there a problem
as
not
the
with the first
29th
stimulus
of February
package, but perhaps
2008,
with the shape and the delivery of the second one?
Months before Lehman's collapsed, he asked me straight out on a VIP plane flight to Gladstone. We just settled into the flight and he leaned across the table and he said, "What's the worst thing that could happen?" And my brain was not in that space, and it should have been. And it took me a while to understand that he was talking about the possibility of a global financial crisis hitting Australia and how that would affect Australia. And I think that's to his very great credit that he was so far ahead of where, well, so far.
Was part of the problem, though, I know the slogan for the second one was timely, targeted, temporary, but we're just seeing the ends of that. One personal through the system now, hardly seen a lot of this temporary debate in a way that I can't recall a Treasury Secretary being in before. What did you learn from that? Did you have too high a profile at that time, do you think?
Oh, I think so, but I don't know how on earth you avoid it. Look, the situation is that we have Senate estimates in this country, and that's a good thing and it's a bad thing. But what it meant in this case was that since the fiscal stimulus package was being so hotly contested politically, it was such a big political issue, as soon as I walked into Senate estimates, I was going to be under the gun. Now, what do? Do I equivocate? Do I say, oh, well, I'm not sure that this is really needed, or it's inappropriate? For me, the senior economic advisor, the most senior economic advisor in the country, it's simply inappropriate for me to comment on whether the government's doing the right thing or the wrong thing.
Do you worry that government spending has in some way become infected because of problems?
You don't really have a choice. Well, you do. You do have a choice.
Particularly when I'm thinking of
but to equivocate is to do damage to the effectiveness of the package.
Do you look at headlines like the ones we see this morning that JP Morgan has got $2 billion worth of trading losses and wonder what we've learned and what we've done to ensure that this never happens again?
I think it's a very serious issue, actually, Chris. But, there's a question whether you can regulate this stuff, whether you can have a system of regulation which is so strong that it prevents those kinds of judgments being made by senior executives in those sorts of institutions. And it's not clear that you can. To some extent you can, of course, and Australia's system of prudential regulation, the system of regulation that we have for our major financial institutions, those that take deposits, so our banks, stands out head and shoulders above the systems of prudential regulation that we saw around the world prior to the global financial crisis. And that's a principal reason. It's not the only reason, but it's the principal reason why the Australian financial system today is as strong as it is.
And hasn't the financial crisis too exposed really big structural problems in places like Europe, perhaps insurmountable ones?
Yes. Well, yes, to both parts of that question, really. I think the problems are... This is a personal view, obviously. Well, actually, everything I've said to you is a personal view, but let me make the point that I personally, I've never seen how the euro would work. I've never seen how it could be expected to work without a genuine fiscal union. People in Australia understand that without our system of horizontal fiscal legalisation, without fiscal transfers from one state to another state, this federation would simply not hang together. There's no way it would have hung together in the way that it has without that system of fiscal transfers amongst jurisdictions. People understand that. People in Europe have not understood that, and they need to understand it. The question is whether it's too late. That's the question.
Well, they certainly understood it with the Maastricht Treaty, didn't they? They understood that they had to have some kind of fiscal union if they were going to have monetary union.
No, actually, no, and this is a very important point.
What about the Stability Pact?
Exactly. Okay, no, I understand. So the Maastricht Treaty, which predates the euro, but was seen as a set of disciplines that should be applied to countries if they are going into the euro. What that was designed to do, and what the Stability and Growth Pact in the euro was designed to do, was to prevent governments like the Greek government from taking the easy way out.
But just to
So let me
finish
explain
on the stimulus
that. And Greece
package,
did take the easy way
do
out.
you fear
Here's the
that
issue.
the politics of
If you have two countries that share the same currency,
they get no credit,
and they have different rates of productivity growth,
the population doesn't understand
the only
bullet
way
that they
to
have
make that
dodged.
hang together is for, well, there are two ways. One is a fiscal transfer from the high productivity growth country to the low